Great to have you with us on the show tonight. I'm Brian Schnee. We're already in the month of August, and wildfire conversations have continued over the last few months here. And for that, we have a great panel, probably a bunch of guys that normally don't get together and do this on television, but it is great to have representatives from the state of Utah, from the U.S. Forest Service, from the Bureau of Land Management. Let's do some name introductions for you. Chris Delaney, State Fire Management Officer with BLM Utah down on the end here. Ben Newburn, Director of Fire and Aviation Management for the Intermountain region for the U.S. Forest Service. And Brett Ostler, State Fire Management Officer with the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, commonly referred to as the state. So it's great to have all of you here. Let's talk about just generalized things right now. We'll get to the wildfire sense of where things are in August in a moment. Last week we were talking about keeping folks in Utah, keeping fire resources in Utah for the threat of the what if. It's really hot and dry out, low relative humidity, red flag warnings, you name it. We all know this. What was the goal of being able to keep folks here given what is happening around the state?
Well, we needed to make sure that the assets that we have in Utah are covered. And meaning that is, you know, if a fire is delegated to the state of Utah, we need to have those resources here to fight the fire, because at a national planning level 5, you're not going to get resources for days. So we needed to keep those resources here to fight the fires that were going to come, or if they came.
And when you say those resources, what are you referring to for the public to better understand?
So the cooperators, which is the fire departments throughout the state. Those are our cooperators, and then also our federal partners have resources as well that, you know, they're our federal partners.
What weighs into a decision like this? I imagine this isn't overly common, or something maybe you do on the yearly. I haven't remembered it, at least in recent years, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. How did you make this decision to roll that out last week?
So the last time we did this was in 2018, and we base it off of fire seasons, the way they look, the ERCs, the weather that's predicted, and just how things nationwide are looking.
So what happened in the last couple of days? Because we have folks heading out, and that's through a different system, right? Is that how this works? Because we've seen, I just noticed last night, Salt Lake City Fire, part of an EMAC team, a lot of folks are going to where our smoke is coming from, which is the Park Fire in California, which is absolutely massive. So we're still sending help in some way, it seems like. Is that correct?
In a small way. So they dispatch through an EMAC system through the Division of Emergency Management. All other resources we're continuing to hold at least through the weekend. We'll reevaluate Monday.
Okay. Anything else on the sense of where we are in terms of being ready for what happens here in Utah? On behalf of everybody, because really, initial attack involves whoever's closest, whoever can get there, and whatever resources are available, right?
So the resources that we did hold here, we formed 3 task forces, and 2 of those task forces responded to the Dry Fork fire in Rich County, which was a benefit for us. We was able to catch that fire, and it was a huge benefit. We showed the value of holding those resources. Great
to have Ben here as the Director of Fire and Aviation, because aviation is a big thing that the public can see. Look on your screen here, this LAT that was hanging out at Hill Air Force Base most of the week and responded in Utah County last night. Think about just how valuable these resources are, and they're not always nearby. How does all of that work, Ben, where we can get the aircraft we need to slow the spread on the ground?
Well, the nice thing about aircraft is they move fairly quickly. And so depending on where we have them positioned, they can respond to fires over a wide landscape. We have a mobilization system that's interconnected between all of our dispatch centers. And so no matter where that aircraft is sitting at the moment when the fire occurs, we can move them to the fire fairly quickly. Great examples of that occurred here just the other week when we had a fire on top of the hill above the Capitol, and we were able to bring a lot of aviation assets into that fire very quickly.
Chris, what resources do the Bureau of Land Management have here in Utah, specifically aviation-wise? You have the seat bases. I mean, you have a lot that is BLM specific here for the state, right?
We do. We have the Tooele Valley seat base that's obviously located out in Tooele Valley. There we have 2 single-engine air tankers stationed. We also have the National Air Tanker Base out of Cedar City, which takes large air tankers, as well as we usually have single-engine air tankers there as well. In addition to that, we have 2 exclusive use helicopters, much like what the Forest Service has here. One stationed out of Moab and the other one out of Tooele Valley as well.
So we have a lot here. And over the last couple of years, the state has ramped that up as well, right?
We have. Yeah, we have contract for 2 Type 1 helicopters, one located in Spanish Fork, one in Cedar City. And then our newest platform is a Type 3 helicopter with Helitack out of Spanish Fork.
Okay, and they've been busy.
They've been very busy.
Everyone's been busy. The B word is not is very universal, I think, for everyone working in the fire service so far this fire year. So as we look at the people that are actually doing this work, has every position been filled? Can we keep people in those spots? What is the situation like with staffing? Chris, I'd love to start with you and just kind of work our way down because we have 3 different agencies represented here tonight.
You bet. I think that we would always love to hire more people, whether that's due to lack of budget or whether it's we just can't find qualified people. Every one of our pieces of apparatus this year was staffed. We've also worked to bring additional resources in from other states when activity dictates, where activity is slow, such as in Wyoming and other states like that. We've brought engines in and Helitack personnel to help bolster the resources that we currently have here in Utah.
Chris, how about on behalf of Ben, my apologies, on behalf of the U.S. Forest Service, where are things at in terms of staffing? I mean, you got all the forests here, there's probably a vacancy here and there, and then you try to swoop it up and get it filled. But in terms of fire-specific positions, how's that looking here in 2024?
Here in Utah, we're actually doing fairly well. There's continued issues with the pay rate that we offer from the federal government and other things that incentivize hiring. And just like any other employer, the labor market right now is struggling. You know, we're having a hard time filling jobs. You go to just about any business and you'll see a help wanted sign. We're no different. However, here in Utah, we have been fairly successful. We have all of our positions, all of our pieces of equipment, filled and staffed at the moment. We're also, as Chris is mentioning, able to move resources around. And so when there's a need here in Utah, we can source resources from outside the area to surge in and help us when fire threat occurs.
Brett, before we kind of toss the same sort of question towards the state level, on the federal level, without getting too much into D.C., because that gets into the weeds, there's been a lot of conversations about the Paycheck Protection Act and other things that have been floated there by several members of Congress trying to get wildland firefighters to see the benefit of being on a long-term incident, getting the premium pay perhaps, whatever that looks like. In theory, in years to come, or maybe even in the short term, on the federal side, how could that look here in Utah if it does move through? Would that be the success that everyone's been waiting for here to at least get a little relief for some of the crews?
I would say that it is one of the answers, but it by itself is not the answer. There are multiple facets to the issue. Some of them are bigger than just the fire community. Cost of housing, for example, and being able to afford to live in some of our communities that these firefighters serve is definitely one of the other issues that we need to solve as a community. And then also the idea that this is a career and that we're hiring people that aren't just going to be here for the summer, but yet they'll be here for a career year after year and build a professional workforce.
Brian, I think the other thing that I would say is, hopefully some of these pay tables, special pay incentives that will be enacted will help pay a more livable wage. Many of our firefighters have to work as much in 6 months as what most people work in a year or year and a half just to make a livable wage and pay mortgage and car payment and child care. So hopefully what we'll see is that people will want to make this a career. They won't have to be gone all summer long, all year long, just to pay the bills.
Well, we'll talk about the state level in just a second. We'll also talk about general wildfire season here in 2024, where things stand right now, both here and in the region, on the other side. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on the program tonight. It's nice to have you with us because we're having this ongoing conversation about just wildfire in Utah. We are very heavily involved in the Intermountain region of what is going on here in the terms of fire in the landscape, whether that's prescribed fire work or other work done before the traditional fire season, or where we sit right now, where this big banner is behind us telling you kind of what's taking place. We're talking about the pay structure kind of at the federal level, keeping people in the line of work of wildfire. Brett, we left off kind of where things are at the state level. How are you seeing things with the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands in terms of staffing statewide and any challenges right now?
So staffing for us looks a lot different than it does with our federal partners because we staff a fire warden that's full-time in every county, and that's basically our full-time staff, and then we rely on the fire departments to help fight those fires. We do have other positions with Lone Peak. We've got 2 hotshot crews and some IA crews, fuels crews. Right now, we're fully staffed, and within the last 2 years, we've really been able to bring our wages up with the help of the legislature, the governor, and the leadership at Department of Natural Resources. We've been able to get the pay wages for Utah up to a level where we're very competitive out there in the market.
Okay, I'm not throwing ages out there, but a lot of you have worked in the landscape of wildfire for a long time. Just read the resumes here. How would you describe 2024 and what we're seeing as activity here in Utah early August and what we've seen before this and where things could go? Kind of that generalized, where are we right now?
I think if you look at kind of acres burned, total number of fires that we've had statewide, it's been several years since we've seen this type of activity in Utah. I would say that there's also a whole kind of generation of firefighters that may have not seen the type of activity or fire behavior that we've seen with some of the slower years in the past 2 to 3 years. Really, you have to go back to 2018 since we've seen some of this. And so people's memories are short, and it's a challenge to train new firefighters to be aware and expecting the behavior that we're seeing this year.
Ben, how do you feel like it is from the Forest Service perspective?
I would agree with Chris. The one thing I would add is typically by this time of year we'd start seeing some more moisture come into the state of Utah through the monsoon, and we haven't seen that yet. That might be changing here in the future, but we've had a fire season that has lasted a little bit longer than it typically would, and that's similar to the 2018 season that many of us can probably remember that have been around. The other thing that I would add is we've been very successful with initial attack, but still fires have gotten away, and we've been forced into a more large fire strategy on some of those incidents. But our campaign, the Fire Sense campaign and other things have been very successful, and I think there's a role that the community has in preventing human-caused fires, because seasons like this, those are fires that we could do without.
How you feeling, Brett?
Not bad. So like these guys said, 2018 was the last fire season that we've seen that really, took us out to lunch. But the last 2 years, we've received a snowpack that was very impactful for the fuels, and now we're burning that fuel. And so we've had a dry season so far, not much rain, and we'll see what the rest of the summer looks like. And we're just holding on to see what it's going to do. But like Ben said, we do have some moisture predicted to come in for Utah, and we'll see if that kind of takes us out of the game.
All right, August 8th, that's where we are right now. And great to have this roundtable. You want to do this every week, guys? I mean, I feel like we've got more to talk about. No yeses. No quick yeses. Chris Delaney, Ben Newburn, and Brett Ostler joining us on the program tonight. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.